Hey guys, Aaron Zagarba here, and today in this video we are going to be talking about the setup that they had here at UCTV, otherwise known as Channel 19. Let's get started. Alright, so what I got here is essentially a mount where they would put the cameras, or a dolly, and basically what they would do is if I could get these things down, which they will not, they absolutely refuse to fold down back into place, and that's probably because they haven't been used in forever. But basically, in this room, which used to be the broadcasting room, where they would have talking heads, talking about the weather, talking about different events going on campus, they would have 3 of these cameras mounted on dollies like this, and of course they could move them around the studio a little bit, which it's not very big. It's not very big in here, but like they had enough space to move things around a little bit. And of course, this massive thing at the very front of the camera was a teleprompter. And of course, you can see in this little basket right here, that is where a monitor would have gone. Of course, back then the monitors were much bigger, which I think we still have a few of them. I do not know if they all work, but a lot of stuff has been taken out. But basically, how a teleprompter works is you have, of course, you want your notes, so you know what you were saying and know what you're talking about, because you can't always memorize it in time, so they have teleprompters. And basically, they will have a TV with the notes that will slowly move across the screen, so you will begin to read them. And basically, it will reflect onto this little glass/mirror type thing, but it is specifically designed in such a way so that it doesn't interfere with the actual camera. So you're still looking directly at the camera, but you're also seeing the notes. So when you're on the news cycle, which they have newer and nicer versions of these at modern news stations, but of course back in the day, they're using a setup like this. And of course, I bet even for the time, this might have even been an outdated setup when UCTV was still kind of a thing. But point being, this is the setup that they had here, or at least one of them. A lot of it has been taken down. This is what the camera looks like without it being mounted on anything, which I have done a video on. And as you can see, it was originally intended to be a shoulder-mounted camera. This is a mini DV camera. This is not DV cam, so it is mini DV. But of course, it's obviously not meant for your average person. An average person would definitely not want to have a camera like this. If any of y'all grew up in the early 2000s or the 90s, you will probably remember some of the little handheld mini DV tape camcorders. Now, of course, a lot of people get all these different formats confused. So there is multiple different formats, such as high 8mm, mini DV, and DV cam, which is the more professional version of mini DV, and a few others, including VHS and Betamax, which is an analog tape format. But anyways, they all kind of fall under somewhat the same vein, but a lot of people get those confused because there's so many. But anyways, they would have a setup similar to this. They would, of course, when this was still operating, pretty much nothing was messed with. After they had the cameras set up the right way they wanted them to, and they had the white balance set and all that kind of stuff, they would pretty much hardly ever do anything with the cameras. They wouldn't mess with any of the settings. They would just move them around if needed and zoom them in if needed. But pretty much nothing would be really done when it comes to settings-wise once they have everything set up. Now, the way they would have power is there is a little area on the back which is DC power, and they would plug it into a wall. Because there's no need for a battery when you constantly have access to the wall outlets. Now, they would also, I think, on some of these would have a monitor. Finding all this equipment is kind of hard, but this is the most complete setup that I have been able to find here at the studio. We have 3 of these big heavy cameras, and they would all be set up in here. And of course, they would also have headphones, so they can communicate back and forth with the operators in the studio, which that, by the way, behind that TV right there, used to be all glass, so you could actually see what was happening while you were controlling everything, controlling the lights above, which also don't exist anymore. The only thing that exists are a few of the cables and stuff that are still running. And of course, there's a lot of acoustic foam, which makes this the perfect spot for an editing lab for students. Now, this thing is absolutely heavy, so this, and it's miserable to move. It is a nightmare to move. But the point is, you're not going to be really doing much with it. You're not going to be moving it often. If you're going to move it at all, you're going to move it just a little bit to get a different angle or a shot on someone. But there wasn't much that would have been really changed with the setup. If you flip it around, it's covered in dust. You can see the other side with all the dials for audio control and everything like that. But it was actually very, I wouldn't say simple, but pretty much once they had everything set up the way they needed, nothing would be moved. They would only have people like camera operators making sure that everything looked right. And then, of course, they would have cables that would be going into the room where they would actually transmit and stuff like that, and they could edit it live and stuff like that. And of course, they would also, as far as I know, they would also record directly on the mini DV tapes to save for archival purposes as well. So you can imagine, at the same time, while they're actually actively sending signals out, while these cables are coming from the cameras going into the control room, and then of course the people in the control room are processing all that and switching back and forth to different cameras for the broadcast. They also had tapes that they would have inside here, which there's currently no tape in here. It is also covered completely in dust. And of course, they would not use the onboard cameras. The onboard microphone. So they would use little lapel mics, which would also be connected. All of this was interconnected to a system that was all kind of back here. And honestly, it can be kind of chaotic when you really put everything into perspective, thinking about the amount of cables and wiring that you'd have for monitors, for microphones, for video. You have 3 cameras set up, and then maybe even you have some of the cameras that are much smaller, which are their field cameras that they would take out on the field. But they would have all that set up. And yeah, it was a lot of work back in the day, and unfortunately I was not here when they did that. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.